Welcome to Scaling the Wall, a podcast where we uncover the real stories behind how people got into cybersecurity in the first place. And what we're learning is, most didn't follow a straight path. And that wall that seems so high from the outside isn't as tall as it really looks. So listen in and see where your story might fit. Let's get to it. Now I can tell you. So we do this subscription service called Trade. This is in no way an advertisement for Trade, but I am a bit of a gourmet coffee snob myself. And I mean, I'm very into you weigh your coffee, you actually measure the amount of water you're using depending on the type of brew you're doing, whether it's like French press or espresso. You have to grind it to a certain level of fineness. Like, it's an art, man. I like it.
You're a real aficionado.
Not really. I'm just an artist, a coffee artist or coffee snob by some.
Can you do any milk foam art?
Yes, but it's like really, really, really minimal. It's like next to nothing. So I don't know. It's kind of boring. Like I try to pour it, and then you start to get the semblance of a design, and then it just turns into people who are crazy might actually be able to see something in it. Kind of like ink splotch things that psychologists or psychiatrists use, one of those. So maybe we'll call it art because of that. Actually, it looks like the dog on your hat. That's typically what it ends up looking like.
Is that your dog? My dog looks like a mess, a messy.
No, your dog looks like latte art. Poor latte art, but latte art.
She definitely does have that Oreo cookie blast smoothie vibe going on. Apparently my camera is struggling to stay focused too. What's going on there? What's going on there, camera?
I can't actually tell. Also, I should probably make sure it's using the right microphone for me, because earlier this morning I was doing a podcast for someone else and it wasn't. Say it says Cam Link. Elgato Wave XLR. Sweet. Yeah, your camera's having trouble.
There we go.
It's all the light.
I fixed it.
You fixed it. Hooray.
But you were doing a podcast for somebody else. You're not allowed to have others.
Well, I was I was a guest.
Well, that makes sense. You're very high in demand. For those that don't know that are watching this, I actually had to start talking to Will about getting his time on his podcast 2 years ago. That's how early you have to book time with Will.
730 days? Is that 365 times 2? That feels like 365 times.
So if you're watching this, I want to be on Scaling the Wall. Good luck.
Put your tickets in now.
Yeah,
got a line of people. Dean, thanks for actually agreeing to be on here, because I know it was very last minute, in all honesty. To be fair, you were asking, but I hadn't actually set a date with you. And then out of nowhere, I was like, hey, how about this week? So it actually worked out perfect. And it's Friday. It's Friday, which it won't be Friday when this episode launches on Wednesday, but it's Friday for us. So we get to, why not, Friendship Friday, have some fun here and connect with buddies in the channel. So Dean, you've done a lot. You wear a lot of hats, or have worn a lot of hats, and not just like dog and empath and helped, and you just put on every hat you own. There you go. See, you've worn a lot of hats, just about every hat in the MSP world, apparently. I'm surprised you only have 4 back there, but you were an MSP at one point, right? You were part of an MSP?
I was an MSP for about 15 years.
So you went from MSP master to spice master to the lobster crab of accountability. Is that a fair?
Other way around. MSP to the accountability crab, accountability lobster, to then jaded, burned out, spicy Dean. Yeah, that's the third generation of Dean.
Burned out spicy Dean. All right, so how'd you get to burned out spicy Dean? Walk me through the story of Dean, who went from
that's a very simple
bright-eyed, bushy-tailed MSP to spicy burnt out.
MSPs are just a operational dumpster fire across the board. So that explains the burned out spiciness. But the actual story is far more interesting, folks. And
tune in next week.
Payments of $29.95. You too can subscribe to the fair trade, whatever product Will was talking about earlier, and hear more about it.
That was a podcast worthy advertisement if I've ever heard one.
Almost.
So
it's funny I think it's funny because I got involved with the industry because I didn't know about the industry. And that's been the entirety of my entire journey through the MSP space. And in fact, even working for an MSP was an accident. I didn't even know such a thing was a thing. And I found that that was actually a very common occurrence. Depending on where you're buying your lists from, people are going to say there's anywhere from 40,000 to 140,000 English speaking MSPs in the world. And I know, at least from the small amount I've met, only about 20% of them, like if you think of the channel as like an actual river, only about 20% of them have ever even dipped a toe in that. The rest of them
And
don't
speaking
know it's
English?
there or don't want to dip a toe in. There's a lot of people who just don't know about any of this. And so my entire journey was discovering that, being horrified by how much harder that made everything, and then trying to fix as much of that as I could.
Yeah, so you were running into, I guess, less than ideal organizational structures and approaches to business, and seeing, hey, this doesn't work. Why are we set up this way? Why is this thing happening this way? And then seeking to change it, which when you're not the owner of the MSP and you come in as an employee, it's actually very difficult to make any change to begin with. Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
Yes. I was very fortunate to work for an owner that recognized both that he didn't want to run the whole business and that he had hit the limits of his ability to move things forward, and was also willing to invest in training me. That combination is somewhat rare in an entrepreneur. Being an entrepreneur does require, and I say this with love, requires a little bit of ego. You have to believe in yourself to go out and start a business. I mean, there's risk. And seeing past that, like really seeing past that, that's hard. And I don't think we give entrepreneurs, in the space very entrepreneurial, I don't think we give entrepreneurs enough credit and enough grace with that. It's very easy to say entrepreneurs are very self-focused, ego-driven. They don't pay attention. They think they're the best. It's a little bit harder to take a step back and recognize that that's why they have a business. That
Yeah.
that
When you
that passion and that fire is what made them successful. And it's a lot of work to be introspective enough to take a step back and be like, well, hang on a minute. And if I could go out now and just kind of collectively give every single entrepreneur in our space a hug and just be like, hey, like you did a good job. You built a company, whether that's with one person, 20 people, 200 people, good for you. And like, it's all right if you never realized you were the bottleneck, or it's all right if you did and didn't know what to do next. Good for you. That doesn't get addressed enough.
It doesn't. Honestly, and to your point, what we were saying is there's some entrepreneurs take on a bit of a stigma, right? Like you said, oh, they don't care. They're building the company. They're disconnected. They're just out there. They're just out there to grind and win and build the company. And yeah, you kind of have to. Like there is a bit of a persona you need to have to be a successful entrepreneur. But at the same time, some of the ones I've met, especially in this space, and why I think a lot of people stick in the channel is if you find the right business owner, someone who really not just built their business successfully, but like you said, invests in the employees in a way that seeks to better them with kind of the knowledge of like, yes, I'm doing this because I want to retain this employee and I recognize their value, but at the same time, I can see this person going places in the channel. That's huge. Like if you were truly just a selfish entrepreneur doing your own thing, then any person you would train up, you'd basically like put some sort of non-compete in place and say you're not allowed to leave here, and if you do, you can't work in the channel for 3 years or something ridiculous, right?
If you want a soundbitey pro tip that you can edit out later, or if you only want to watch this part of Will's show and then tune out and go look at memes on the internet, I will tell you the single biggest employee and professional development secret I can possibly give you. And I work for an employee and professional development company, and it's not buy our product. It's every day. If you approach your staff with a mindset of today, my job is to make this person on my team the most employable version of themselves they have ever been. I'm going to make them the most attractive candidate to every recruiter that is in the area by whatever their skill set and their desire and their abilities are, investing in that. And then they're going to give me the opportunity every 8-hour day to convince them why they should come back tomorrow and put all of that into my company. We're going to repeat this every day. That's kind of how you approach your employees. You will occasionally lose a few people, but overall, you will find that the team that you build, even when they leave your organization, are at a level of quality, well, you'll be proud to see them somewhere else. Even if it's your competitor down the street, you will tell your own customers, hey, my former best guy, he works down the street for Terrible Co. And kind of like that. It's
Terrible
worth
co.
doing. So if anybody wanted to hear that pro tip, that will pay you dividends.
Amazing. So taking back to your story a little bit, because that's a really
Yeah.
helpful pro tip. What do you kind of wish that, knowing all those early roles in the MSP space, knowing it's a dumpster fire, what did you not understand that you wish someone had told you? Was it that? Was there something else that you kind of, when you stepped in the space, you're like, or now looking back, you're like, man, I could have been wildly more successful if I had just done X, or I had known about X, or engaged Y, or whatever.
Sure.
Sorry to throw so much algebra at you.
No. It's perfect. So if we think of help desk or support, and specifically we think about it with computers and related computer technology, networking, all the stuff as kids we're passionate about tinkering with. I want to do that for a job. Peeing, or if we expand that a little bit, like for profit as a service, IT something is probably only maybe about 40% of the pie. The other 60% of this entire space is enterprise or internal. You're supporting one organization, might be huge, but one organization. And so most of the zeitgeist around IT support skews toward that 60%. The TV shows, the movies we see, shows like the IT Crowd, they focus on that, this idea that that is what IT support is. It makes sense. That is the majority of people doing it. The downside to that is folks who get involved in this industry at any level, they've not been exposed to the fact that this is a business. And the sooner you learn how the business works and why the business works, the sooner you can then start uplifting and connecting the dots to what you're doing. And so that is what I wish I knew getting into it. When I applied for the job at the now non-existent Think Tech Computers, I was in college the second time around. I needed the job. I have been taking apart and fixing computers literally since I was a toddler. And I, at a board level, could explain to you how memory registers work and how an address bus works. I thought I've never met another person in my circle that knew more about how a computer functions than Dean. I knew smarter people existed. I very confidently applied for a level 2 tech support role at this computer company that was, within driving distance of the college. Went and interviewed, and this guy at this, I was surprised, this small company that did not have a lot of computer guts in the office, interviews me and asked me a bunch of really high level questions about stuff like FSMO roles and Active Directory. And I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, I came here to talk about like how a hard drive writes data, or like computer stuff, what an IRQ is, like what do you mean, how do I talk somebody through resetting a mouse? It hadn't even occurred to me because I didn't know what I didn't know. And I think that happens to a lot of people in this space within their own role. They don't know what they don't know, and what they do know is a relatively skewed perspective based on where most people in IT work, which isn't in MSPs. It isn't at copier dealers that sell recurring services. It isn't at a break fix shop that will sell you a, management subscription. It isn't even at Apple Care, which is probably the biggest enterprise MSP. Most people aren't doing that, and learning that and working for somebody that very quickly, when I would have a question, when I would say, well, I don't understand this. I don't agree. Why are we doing this? Let me show you why. Let me explain it to you. That was insanely helpful. And I recognized through that how come there isn't like books for this? And, outside of Bob Coppedge's books, which we had back then, like there really kind of wasn't, like there was no real website to go to. There was nowhere I could go where I could find more about how to MSP, because those resources were, you had to know the person or pay to be in a group. It wasn't public info. I didn't even know about stuff like ITIL or ISO 2000, which are, ITSM support frameworks. Like I didn't know about any of this. And I found it accidentally. I came across Martin and Kelvin's blogs because we were switching from Kaseya to Lab Tech, and I found Lab Tech Geek and started reading more. This random Dutch guy, Kelvin, was making these blog posts about scripting. And so the guy Martin, who some of you may know of MSP Geek and ConnectWise, was running this Lab Tech Geek blog. And I was like, huh, well, here's at least like 2 dozen other people that are doing what I do. But it was weird. There was an MSP down the street. I knew that because my boss told me that. I'd never seen those guys anywhere, never seen them on another site. I'm like, where are all these people I'm being told are MSPs? Where do they go? And I had to scrap all that together, and that sucked. There was a lot of skin knees there. I had to teach myself how to ride a bike on a road full of broken glass and lemon juice and sand because I didn't know that there was a better way.
Yeah.
And that was awful. And why should anyone have to go through that? I mean, that's terrible. No one who has a desire to be good at doing something should have to go through that level of pain in an industry that has existed long enough where other people have at least solved for some of that pain. But here we still are. And that was what really inspired me early on to be like, well, if no one's going to start regurgitating this, I will. And I got involved. I discovered relatively later than I'm proud to say, I discovered the RMSP subreddit that Matt Topper created for the exact same reason. I discovered some of the MSP discords, and I got in these things, and right away I saw people asking the questions I was asking 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and no one was answering. I'm like, well, shit, I got a little extra time every day. Let me answer them, while I'm doing my job as a service manager. And that was kind of where it all came from. It was just, I want to help other people. And I want other people to not ever have to skin that knee that I did if we can possibly avoid it.
Yeah, dude. Thanks for sharing that. And also it is really fortunate that today we have more of those communities where people can ask those questions. And there are people like Dean who says I want to answer those. Or even like I don't typically go super into the vendor behind the person or the MSP behind the person, but I mean I really think what's happening at Empath is really cool, mainly because it's all about exactly what you just said. It feels like to me you've stepped into a company that is doing exactly what you wish was done for you when you first started in the industry. How funny is it that because I was in the same boat, dude. I was self-proclaimed techie. I was building computers. I understood like if something broke technologically in the house, it was usually my fault growing up because I was messing with something or trying to figure something out. And you create this idea that you really know what's going on. But then when you step into a professional world, into any field, I think professionally, you realize how much you really don't know. And when you have to figure it out yourself, it's extremely challenging. So it's awesome that you had a supervisor, a boss who invested in you what he could. But like you said, it's rough that you had to go through kind of all of this I mean, I liked your imagery, right? Riding a bike and falling off it and skinning your knee on glass and broken glass and lemon. Um, that's weirdly accurate. So it begs the question, just, looking at my notes here, there's a couple of titles that I came across that could be a podcast title all in of itself. So we brought up one before, Accountability Crab, but you also had Professional Annoyer of Ray, Community Lobster is and here's the thing, right? Like you went through a lot of challenge in your early MSP days, but you've kind of come out with using humor as a way of connecting with people. Is that your way of surviving in the MSP ecosystem, or is it your secret weapon? Are you making an impact with it? Like, do you
That,
think it helps people lower their guard? Or are you just
yeah.
being you?
So I have a very low emotional EQ, so emotional intelligence.
Mhm.
If I were motivated, I would have been a good entrepreneur by the definition I gave earlier. I tend to be certain that what I know is correct and the absolute truth. I tend to be very unapologetic about expressing that. And I tend to have a lot of trouble remembering to be empathetic to other people. And I've had this problem since I was a child. And when we started working, funnily enough, early on in my MSP career, I was at an IT Nation, and I had heard maybe like 1 year into it at that time, Rex Frank speak when he had just started C-level. He did some pre-day about projects. And I'm sitting in this project pre-day, and I never heard anybody talk about projects this way ever. And bear in mind, I went to school to be an engineer, so I was familiar with Gantt charts and projects. I never heard someone talk about them like in terms of money. Blew my mind. We signed up with C-level, and we got assigned this coach, Dave Shaffron, who I will still stand by is absolutely the Sheldon Cooper of MSP knowledge and one of the most humbly intelligent, quiet, and slightly on the spectrum people I've ever met in this space. Absolute genius. One day on a C-level consulting call, total non sequitur, David, just out of nowhere, sort of very quietly on this call, goes, Dean, if you don't get a handle on your emotional intelligence, it will be a career limiter. And it was the right person at the right time with me in the right mood to hear that, to just have this moment where I was like, whoa. And so I started working on it. And I got to a point where I was better. Here's the thing when you're offering people advice, especially around something that now you have a proven track record of being able to execute properly. What's easier? Spending 6 months trying to coach you, Will, through how to, let's say, operationalize and run through a plan on how you're going to recognize revenue on a project, or to tell you how to do it. And when you tell me I don't agree, to basically be like, well, you stupid idiot. Like, if you knew what you were doing, we wouldn't be on this call. So how about you shut up and do it my way? The second one's much easier to do in the moment. And that was my default. And I'm like, okay, even though I've gotten better at not getting angry, I'm not better at not doing that. I'm not going to turn that part of Dean off. How do I make that less caustic? And it occurred to me, well, let's find a character. So one of my favorite shows, Futurama, has Dr. Zoidberg. If you like the show, Dr. Zoidberg is the comedic relief. He is also, if you're into Futurama, secretly the single most important character on the show. He is the reason everyone on that show is alive, and the reason why everyone on that show, and I would go so far as to say that version of their universe, continues to exist. But he is otherwise a complete and utter nonsense creature. I started posting things as Dr. Zoidberg because Dr. Zoidberg is always humble. He loves his friends. Dr. Zoidberg is never intentionally rude. If he hurts somebody, he feels terrible immediately. And he does offer a lot of relatively harsh and very coarse truths, but always while falling on his face or getting slapped with a pie. So I became Dr. Zoidberg on Reddit, on Discord, because I had to be a character to not be an asshole.
Hmm.
And it worked.
So, speaking of being an a-hole, because that's a really interesting kind of segue into how you shifted from the MSP space into the vendor community. One thing, I don't know about you, I pick up on this a lot, is people tend to use particular language. For example, you can talk about AI, right? Like AI in posts, it's getting really easy to detect when someone has just written a post using AI. And it's not just because of M dashes, although that is oftentimes no one used M dashes. Well, very few people did.
This is an
Right.
AI version of Will I'm talking to right now.
It's
Actual
true.
Will's off playing with his kid.
I'm on vacation, or he's on vacation. I'm. But anyway, but one of the things I see in the vendor community a lot is vendors will often get on something like a podcast like this or some live stream or something, and when asked about their product or whatever, they'll lead with, well, MSPs do this, or MSPs think this way, or MSPs act this way, almost like they lump every MSP into one persona. And that would make me mad if I was an MSP. That would make me mad if MSPs were saying, well, vendors do this thing, vendors act this way, right? Like, that's not people, that's clumping everything. And so you're now on the vendor side. What do you think in all of this, like vendors telling MSPs how they are and what they should do and blah blah blah, what do you think one of the biggest misconceptions is vendors have around MSPs? Because I feel like there's a good chunk.
I think that all MSPs are exactly the same in a certain way. And most vendors in our space, because most vendors in our space are relatively small and entrepreneurial, don't don't see what that commonality is, because seeing it would be accepting it for themselves. And that's, nobody here really knows what they're doing. This is a 30-year-old industry full of people, most of our founders in our space, this is their only job. Like, they might have served ice cream or something when they were kids, but they've only ever worked for themselves. They don't know what they don't know. Literally, they are if you look at like a Dunning-Kruger curve and you have to kind of climb Mount Stupid to see how much you don't know, most founders in our space have never climbed the Mount Stupid of working in the business world, because this is it. And if you accept that none of these people are coming from a place of like pedigree or regulation that says here's how it should be, that it is just a bunch of people trying to do the best they can with what they understand, and the whole thing's a chaos engine, then that element is, I would say, I've never met an MSP that does not fall into that category. Or if you want to look at it differently, every Titanic that leaves port saying it's unsinkable, 100% of ships that leave port are sinkable. 100% of MSPs don't know what they're doing. If you accept that, and as a vendor, I kind of that means I probably don't either. Well, suddenly you realize that this whole industry doesn't really have a plan. We're just trying to do the best we can. I like that. Like, to me, that's comforting because it tells me that there's so much room and opportunity for us to discover what we should be and to regulate that ourselves, to eventually rise at a standard or a series of standards, to potentially, I see a little bit of it now with commoditization of parts of our space. Like, it allows our industry to develop some identities. I like that. A lot of people don't, because it's kind of that's kind of scary. I mean, like we live in a world of order. Imagine you go outside, Will, and I'm like, literally everything that happens when you walk out your door is random chaos, and nobody knows what they're doing. Like, that's kind of terrifying. It's sort of what you try to train your children to hopefully never discover about the world. That is our industry. So that to me is the most common thing that every single business in this space shares in common. And if you can accept that, then you don't say things like, well, every MSP does this or every MSP buys that, because they can't. If it's a chaotic mess, there's no way that all of them do it one way. Many of them might. So
Yeah, I was
that's
saying,
the
like,
sort of the
I
band-aid you
love
got to
that,
rip
man.
off.
Yeah, it's like it what popped into my mind is commonality is what builds community, right? And it's if an MSP doesn't know what the heck they're doing and a vendor doesn't know what the heck they're doing, we're just all kind of figuring things out together. But with that common thread of both of us are doing this for cybersecurity's sake. We're trying to help people. We're trying to protect businesses. We're trying to keep them from thing at all a cyber attack. And if they do, we're trying to prevent them from suffering through it. Right. Like that's the whole goal of this industry. So I might not know what the heck I'm doing when it comes to engaging people in this industry or engaging a particular vendor or whatever. But there's this, and I understand part of it's marketing, part of it's like, hey, you want to establish your your presence and your brand, and you have to say, hey, I'm going to be that person who really knows what they're talking about, and gets up there and speaks the truth, and gets up there and speaks authoritatively, and that's not bad. You know what? Study a subject, be authoritative on it. That's great, but at the same time, like, don't lump that knowledge of something into how everybody behaves. That's something I really struggle with. Partially, I don't know if I'm just rebellious, honestly. If it's like when someone says, hey, you're this way, my first response is, no, I'm not. That's not me. I'm not that way. I've always told people that I'm a large child that brings value to the company. So, it's just how I feel. So I really appreciate what you're saying there. And you've been a part of a lot of different communities within the cybersecurity space itself, right? You went through a bunch of them. You said you were an MSP. You have been at a couple different vendors, but also even just like the Reddit communities, the Discord pages, Slack communities. Like, there's so many different avenues and venues in which you can engage. So what about that MSP space though? Because there is another side to this that I'd like to explore a little bit, and you seem to have the connection there, is so many people who engage in the MSP community, who are part of it, whether you're a vendor, whether you're an MSP, love it and don't want to leave. So what's with the stickiness of the community? Like,
Yeah.
why do people want to
I've
stay
got
in
a
it?
great answer for that. So
Yeah,
besides the fact that it's chaotic, information is still relatively hard to find in our space, and we don't have externally regulated practices like a restaurant would or something. That is part of it, right? Like, there's a certain sense of literal safety in numbers. If I am not calling people sheep, but like the idea of, like, literally, if you get into a herd of other herd animals, you are objectively safer. Part of it is that. Let me flip it around, and I'll reframe that for you with a Will question. You're a video game guy. So back in the late 1980s, early 1990s, how did you figure out on a regular old Nintendo Entertainment System and Super Mario Brothers 3 that if you crouched down for 5 seconds on the right color block on the third level, you could go behind the scenes and then get the secret whistle?
a
That
friend
certainly
told
wasn't
me.
written in the book. A friend told you. How'd your
Yeah,
friend find that out?
I have no idea. Probably from a friend or someone at the arcade or
Exactly.
something.
So it wasn't on the internet back then. Common access to the internet. We're talking pre 1995. So very unlikely that someone in your neighborhood could look it up. You could call the Nintendo tip line, but you'd have to know what to ask for. So you probably didn't know to ask for something
Yeah,
you
you
didn't
wouldn't
know
even, who
about.
would even know to ask about a secret
Right.
like that?
So, but yet something like that organically spread across everybody who played that because a friend told you. And how did it make you feel when that friend first told you that and then you went and did it? Do you remember that
Awesome.
feeling? Right? Was
So
that not the best feeling ever?
I still do that every time I play that level now.
People is as much I'm somebody who is relatively okay being by myself. Not stranded on a deserted island with Wilson, but like I'm pretty okay being on my own. Humans are designed to get a dopamine hit from another human saying, "Hey, use this tool this way," and then you do it and it works. Your brain chemistry is designed for your brain to go, "Oh, that was fun. I want that feeling again." That's what community brings us in a space like this. It allows us to get together because there is no still MSP Nintendo tip line, so to speak. We still don't really have that. Your buddy's got to show it to you. Your friend's got to show it to you. The group that you're in has got to be displaying it while you're looking in through the window. Somehow you have to see it, try it out, and be like, "Oh, that's so cool. That's amazing. I feel so good. I feel smart. I'm glad they're my friend. They made me feel smart." That is an incredibly infectious feeling. And this industry is still at a point where we all get to have that feeling all the time because we are kind of such a hot mess. If we become regulated, that'll go away a little bit. And I bet some of the community stickiness will lose a little bit of its luster simply because that will be less amplified. Just like now. Yeah, as a kid now going to watch someone else game on Twitch and maybe learn a few things. Probably they probably enjoy that, but that dopamine response is a little lessened. It's not quite the
It's
same.
the
So
same.
yeah. So it's you see that with any group of people, and eventually someday for us it'll diminish a little bit. But right now we're at like peak
It's
awesomeness,
peak.
like
Yeah.
availability of information and people, and also peak lack of that information being organized or standardized. That is the perfect time for all of us to just get this wonderful feel good feeling when we help each other.
Yeah, man. Oh, man. So showing my age a little bit, I actually never had an original Nintendo, so I didn't even get to experience the secret until like years later when they released Super Mario All Stars on Super Nintendo, and you could go back and play it. But
A little disappointed.
I
A little disappointed.
remember, dude, I remember that though. Like there was something about like a friend telling you it didn't need to be a video game thing either, but the video games were fun because there were secrets that like you couldn't experience in real life. But at the same time, it's like I remember when I was in the space and Wes Spencer was channel chief of then Fifth Wall, right? And Alex Farling, who was still with Lifecycle Insights, right? The two of them called me and like, hey man, we want you to come down for this 2-day boot camp masterclass cyber insurance thing and help us teach it in Chicago. And I was like, what? That's awesome. And I went and they obviously ran most of the class. I spoke for like maybe an hour in the 2 days, but at the same time, just being given that additional thing. And even this morning, I called Alex on the phone to talk about some sales tips, and like he just pumped me full of information. I'm like, dude, I'm excited to take this to my team now. Like this could work. And there's something to that freely like sharing of that information back and forth. Even when you go to conferences, you're in a room full of MSPs for all intents and purposes are at least semi competitors. They might not be in the same region, but they're still MSPs, right? Yet they're hanging out, they're sharing a drink, sharing a story, connecting, making friends, and maybe enter into a peer group at some point and are able to share success stories and say, hey, this worked for me, this didn't work for me, and it helps other people adjust their strategies. And I think that's, going back to the dumpster fire that is MSPs, that's how we learn. And like, I don't want an MSPs for Dummies book. I don't want a how to be a successful MSP in 10 easy steps. Like I would love to go through the trenches with someone else who's been through it before me and say, hey, teach me what you learned, teach me what you did so that I can adapt and learn on the fly. Because you're not going to run into the same mistakes every time. Technology is always changing, but you can learn those skills of adapting and changing and maybe where to draw a line in the sand or to dig your heels in or things like that, right? Like it's cool to hear those stories. You're going to hear about people who I built my MSP really big and sold it, or a vendor, hey, I built this really successful product and then it got bought by ConnectWise or Kaseya or someone, right? Like that's cool. That stuff happens. But the real stories, the ones that I think excite people to keep coming back, are the ones that like Connor talks about, where he's like, I was in my parents' basement and I had zero income and I was just programming and programming until something was built. Or like these stories where it's like, oh, this person has been through it. I've been through it. Like I can connect with that person, you know? And that community keeps us driving forward even when we face challenges. So yeah, man, that's it. So
There's
go ahead.
would not be Dean if I didn't point out that there is a dark side to that whole conversation. And at a certain point, and I've tried to stop using the term best practice because I think it applies the wrong way to ego. But at a certain point, as we get through the chaos, there does become repeatable patterns that I'll call a known good practice that, if followed, barring external influences and literal chaos, result in the intended outcome. And I do get a little bit aggravated in our industry that at times there is, it's like you pointed, there's almost like a hipster level rebellion against that, as though somehow that adds authenticity to your business to be like, well, I'm not going to follow that. Like, why? I would like think about like a restaurant saying there is a known good practice that I should not have raw chicken on the same cutting board as vegetables. We know that we may not know every possible way to do it, but we know that is not the right practice. You should have two cutting boards, and you being like, I'm not listening to best practice,
I just
kitchen
flipped the
safety
cutting board
influencer.
over.
Right. And I see that a lot as almost a resistance to the natural result of us having a community. And it does aggravate the crap out of me, especially when people who are in a position of influence, when they behave that way. Cause it's like imagine if Gordon Ramsay's running around doing that. Like, people at home are going to see that and start doing that and then get sick. And some of those people might die.
Yeah,
No,
you know,
like with
there's something to saying like, hey, I'm gonna try and go off the beaten path here and try something new. But when you have specific practices that just make sense and have been proven to work, why would you not at least try them?
at
You
least
know?
start with them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
at least try it. I mean, if you know it works, if it is proven to work, then you're like, hey, I'm going to go do my own thing. I think it's why so many people, MSPs and vendors, struggle with sales in this space. Is there's a lot of tried and true sales methods that a lot of us, because it's the fun space, it's kind of campy, we have elephants on our wall. It's like it creates this mindset of like, well, we could do sales differently. It's like a vibe check, you know, and it ends up not working out because we are afraid to tell our team, hey, go start making calls, like you're going to be tracked on that, you know,
Some
like
stuff just takes the work. Like, you have a skateboard on your door there. That's a really, really good example. Like, there is a known good way to teach a child how to start skateboarding, and all of the basic fundamental tricks that everybody now knows that have been discovered. There's really only one real way generally to learn them and execute them.
Tony
Now,
Hawk's Pro
as a
Skater.
result of that, people who are at a higher level than probably you or me can iterate. They can come up with new stuff that they pass on down and like, hey, this will kill you. This other trick, if you learn these other ones, it's actually really cool. It's not an anti-innovation, anti-creativity statement, but it is, you have to start looking around and realizing that, wait, everything else I enjoy as a human is based on this fundamental practice. You take it back even to a more basic level. Somebody in the tribe had to eat all the mushrooms to know which ones we shouldn't eat. They're dead now. Somebody had to do that. And if as a group we looked at them, we're like, well, they didn't know what they were doing. I know what I'm doing. And we kept, everyone in the tribe is gone. And now there's no more humans. So there's a blend of understanding that known good practice, but also then having your own unique energy, your own creativity, your own twist. And unfortunately, with a lot of known good practice, it is, you do have to put in the work, at least at first. I'm sorry. You do have
True,
to make
man.
those dials if
You
you're,
got
in
to.
sales. You got to do marketing if you want a funnel. If you're in an MSP, you got to track your data and your revenue, even if entering time is boring and stinky. Like, there's things like that you just kind of got to do. Just like when you take your kid to first learn how to skateboard, you're probably gonna be like, you got to wear a helmet. Sorry, you got to. Like, maybe someday when you're older and a pro skater, you can make that decision on your own. But for now, known good practice, helmet goes on the noggin because you're going to fall.
So
It's the
true.
same type of thing.
Dude, so good. All right, so last question I have for you. If you could, and this might be on the fly, getting you to think on the fly, which you're apparently good at, so it's not even going to trip you up. But if you had to create an MSP boot camp or an MSP conference, what would the what would the keynote or the main theme that you'd want MSPs to take away be?
Well, there's too many conferences already.
That's it. No, don't go to conferences anymore.
Don't go to conferences. I think the biggest takeaway I would want all the MSP people in that room is to understand that fixing computers, that support tickets, all of that, that's not the job. And that might have been what got you the job. That might have been what allowed you to start the MSP. But the minute you started the MSP, that is not the business you are in. You are in the business of people. And the sooner you can learn you are in the business of people, the easier time you'll have with everything else that you're executing here. In my case, it took me a long time to learn I'm in the business of people, not in the business of enforcing rules and policies. And, you got to learn that. And I see it most often when you see MSPs that have white glove service in their taglines. No, you don't. That's not a thing. That doesn't mean what you think it means. And that type of thinking actually is holding your business back because you are looking at white glove service as how quickly and efficiently you can install the RAM or get the printer back online or how many tickets you did or how fast your SLA was. Those are all parts of it. But actual white glove service is Alfred the Butler anticipating what Batman needs and scaring him in the Batcave with it before he's asked for it. Where Bruce Wayne's like, what? As Alfred is manifested behind him with a tray, Master Wayne, your bat suit. That's white glove, literal white glove service. And MSPs aren't at a place where they can do that because they are still thinking that the motions of fixing stuff is the white glove service. So that would probably be the takeaway, is to just hopefully wake up, take the right pill there, Neo, wake up and realize that you are not in the business of fighting machines. You're in the business of being a terrible battery to power a giant simulation that is objectively better than the destroyed Earth that you live in. That's was my Matrix reference there. If you're
It's
not a
good.
Matrix guy.
You went pretty long with that one too.
Yeah.
It's interesting, white glove service. How do you provide white glove service to someone who doesn't necessarily know what they even remotely need? Right? Like your Batman analogy, right? Alfred, first of all, I didn't know Bruce Wayne was Batman, so thanks for revealing that one to the world. But
Well, it
second,
depends which DC universe you're
we're
in.
talking Batman Beyond too, because that was a good show.
Yes.
That was totally different. Anyway, I
Mark Hamill,
digress.
Beth Joker. All right, sorry.
That's true and will always be.
Yes, that is a factual statement.
Yes, factual. That's not opinion. It's fact. So to that end, right? Like your analogy said, you have Alfred who would anticipate Batman's needs, but they were needs that Batman would have, right? And he'd probably come to that conclusion on his own. The challenge is you can't really do that with an end client who doesn't even necessarily understand their own needs. Like that I think is one of the biggest challenges of the industry is you're going in there, you're having conversations with someone who's not techie and you're a huge tech nerd. So that's a real, you were talking about emotional intelligence, but there's also things like cognitive complexities and there's different layers of how much we understand particular subject matter and whatnot. If you're talking to someone who knows nothing about what you're talking about and you start talking about it from some really high level because you anticipated their needs, but they're not even needs that they understand, then maybe that approach isn't the best approach. So I think there's a lot more we could talk about here. We may have to do a live stream at some point, Dean. But hey man, I really appreciate you jumping on this podcast on a Friday afternoon. You got any fun weekend plans?
Yeah, we're going to Martha's Vineyard.
Yeah, because you're preppy New England.
Yeah, we're taking the ferry with the rest of the peasants. We're not pulling out the sailboat for this trip.
It's fair. Sometimes pulling that sailboat out takes a lot of work.
I put my boat shoes on, one servant at a time, like everyone else.
The sweater around your neck, tie the knot. Yeah, nice. Yeah. Cool, man.
Hey, you get it.
Yeah, I got you. There's some fake New Englanders out here on Long Island. So, man, really appreciate you. Appreciate your friendship. Appreciate your insight. And we should do a live stream soon because no one does them anymore. So it'd be kind of fun to just do one for some reason.
I appreciate you and what you're doing and everything that your entire team's doing over there with you're doing the exact same thing you accused Empath of doing. You are making a complicated, complex, confusing, and somewhat dangerous element of this business approachable.
Fun times.
I know you do it as a vendor and you make the money, but forget about that for a minute. Think of all of the people that due to your education, your podcast, and what your company does that have continued to be able to provide a livelihood to their employees because they didn't go out of business. Yeah. Kind of cool.
Pretty cool. Thanks for listening to Scaling the Wall. This episode was brought to you by UKON. At UKON, we believe everybody has the right to survive a cyber attack. Learn more at ukon.com. That's UKON.com. Be sure to check out the show notes if you want to learn more about and connect with our guests from this episode. And if you enjoyed the show and like what you heard, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, subscribe on YouTube, and hit the bell so you never miss a future episode. See you next time.